We're now live. Thank you, thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Comic. I'm your host, Sean Fuller, and today we're joined by one of the legendary comic book artists, Mark McKenna. Got it right?
Good enough.
Yeah. If you've been reading comics over the past few decades, chances are you've been seeing his work. Mark credit spans across Marvel, DC, from Iron Man to Doom's Patrol to Exiles and beyond. But he did not just known for the classic. Mark also is a creator of Combat Jack, a sci-fi horror series featuring space Martians versus alien Jack O'Lantern. We got all age stories about a monkey whose thinks he turned into a banana. We are going to talk about his credible career, his creative process, and how we binge the grasp between being a big publisher and a creative's own work. If you don't mind, let's get started.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. So, Mark, let me click this out of the background. So, Mark, first off, welcome to the show. We had such a long and diverse history, and how did you first break into the comic book industry?
So, when I was a teenager, I was a comic book collector. And when I met with the new talent, I met with the guidance counselor in high school. I was thinking about going into film. I was considering being a film major, but I used to make Super 8 movies in different places, like in a supermarket or in the woods and stuff like that. And then when I met the film chairman at the School of Visual Arts, where I actually went to school, he he told me the chance of me getting a job in film were very difficult. He said the chances are like 10,000 to 1 that I could be a filmmaker. He tried to scare me, and he did a good job scaring me because I decided to become an animation major at my college that I went. And that was before computers, so it was 770 drawings for 1 minute of animation. And somewhere around 220 drawings, I decided I didn't want to do this anymore. And then I went to the comic book. I had a bachelor's of fine arts from School of Visual Arts with an emphasis in illustration. I met the new talent coordinator at DC Comics. His
Hmm.
name was Sal Amendola, and he brought me up to the studio. He brought me up to DC Comics. I sat next to a giant Clark Kent on a big giant statue of Clark Kent reading the Daily Planet, and I sat next to him. I thought this is cool, and
You know what's funny? That sounds like what Clark Kent was based off of.
yeah. So I thought I was going to get a job right away, and basically he said you need about another year's worth of work. And when I was living in Long Island, I used to take the Long Island Railroad to New York City
Okay.
and go to DC, and then I would take my samples from DC and go to Marvel. And Marvel reached out to me one day and said, "We have a program here for new talent, and if you'd like to be involved, it'd be a full-time opportunity for you to be
Hmm.
in the Marvel bullpen." And I had to, at the time the minimum wage was $4.50 an hour, and I was commuting from Long Island. I couldn't afford it, so I told him I couldn't do it. And then one day, John Romita Sr. calls me up, and John was doing a Spider-Man artist from
Hmm.
my childhood almost. And he asked me if I would work with him, and eventually I said yes, I would, and I started at Marvel about a year later.
Ooh, that was an intense year.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure what I was doing, Sean. But but it ended up working out pretty well. I moved in with the assistant art director in Astoria, Queens, and I worked at Marvel on staff for a year and a half. It wasn't until DC called me in 1987 and offered me a contract to do Doctor Fate, and then I did Doctor
Hmm.
Fate and Doom Patrol and Legion of Superheroes, and now I'm in the game now, and I'm doing regular books, and it was good.
So that's let's kind of break that down because that was an intense year even for me listening to it. I can imagine you going through it because first of all you grew up in New York, correct?
Yeah. Long Island. I'm a Long
Long
Island.
Island, New York. Okay, you know about the book. So you are a New Yorker through and through, and now you're being asked to come down to DC to do Yo, that's a big move, first of all.
Yeah, yeah. Hold on though. It wasn't DC, Washington DC. It was DC Comics.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it was there in New York City on 50
Oh, they
30.
were in. Sorry about that. I
Yeah,
forgot
yeah.
them.
That's okay. Yeah, it's easy to mess it up. Get that.
Yeah, so they had you coming into. So let me start over. So now you're coming in, but I didn't even get. I was going to start off when like child would start and then coming back, but that part does let me kind of sit there for a second because that was an intense post college kind of. Cause you started up. Actually, let's go back for a bit. Cause you did talk about film, actual animation, and you're talking about doing 200 to 700 comics just 1 minute
Yes.
of work. So what you kind of touch on base with what got you into that, but can you elaborate kind of you want to be film, but you got into animation. What kind was the what was your counselor the biggest reason for that, or was something else that kind of just made you made that move?
I had to decide on the clearest path for me, and I didn't believe that animation was it because I didn't really have an end. I didn't have an end game. I wasn't sure where I was going to go with it. And when I met the new talent coordinator at DC, and he told me, "You can do this if you stick with it," that was all I needed to hear. And once he
Mhm.
told me that, I became laser focused, and I worked very hard until Marvel hired me to be on staff. It's funny that DC was the guy giving me the classes, but it was Marvel that actually hired me first. And then 2 years later, DC hired me on the contract, and I worked for
But that means that's like working for Microsoft. For me, it would be working for Apple and Microsoft within the same year as
them.
an
Yeah,
IT professional. It's like
yeah,
you just jumped on both bandwagons and be like, you can then talk about what makes each. You can
unique.
talk about for the in-store from the bullpen from one side to the next bullpen to the next side and be like, hey, they're intense, but this is what they do the same, or this is what they do differently.
Yeah. You know what? DC was very corporate offices. They didn't
Mhm.
have like a fun area where you could be a bullpen like Marvel. You know, they had guys in there shooting rubber band fights and giant aluminum balls of gum wrappers, and it was kind of where I wanted to be. You know,
It's strange because that sounds like the difference between Silicon Valley and kind of New York, right? Is the concept of like a chill work environment, everyone is intense,
yeah,
versus you have the New York stock exchange kind of mentality where everything is like we want everything to be kind of structured and laid out, so clear direction. So that's a very interesting insight into kind of the work culture of those companies.
yeah.
Who were some of your artistic influences or mentors early in your career, though?
So I don't know if you know Brian Boland from Judge Dredd. He was a guy. Did I lose you?
Yeah, no, I'm still here. I lost my camera feed.
Oh, okay. Um, are you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I do hear you. I don't see you though.
All right, give me a second. I'm going to just give. I'm going to let you just take it for now
Okay.
until I come back.
Yeah. Um, so I forget. Oh yeah. So my influences were Brian Boland, who did Judge Dredd back in Eagle Comics for in England, really, and guys like John Romita Sr., who ended up calling me up and asking me to do, take a job on a Marvel. It was mostly, and then guy John Beatty, who worked over John Beatty and Zach, who did the Punisher miniseries back then. We were on staff at Marvel. We got to see the stuff firsthand. It was amazing.
Okay, so so that's so. How did you develop your signature style over the past couple of years? Since you had a lot of opportunities working with different styles of writing, drawing, and
Yeah, and inking. Yeah, the thing was, I was watching every day guys like John Romita Sr. and the assistant art director, Tom Morgan, who ended up working for Disney and doing a lot of work for Disney. But I used to watch how they inked, how they would move their hand, uh, and a lot of the structure came from in a pen, dip pen or a brush, I would use my elbow and my wrist as kind of fulcrums, to make my move. So I wouldn't keep the page tight on the board. I would move the page around how I wanted to ink, and then I would just flick the pen or the brush a certain way. And I worked with Joe Sinnott, who did Fantastic Four back in the '60s, and I worked with Al Milgrom and Bob Wyacek and all these guys that I kind of grew up reading their comics. And these guys were offering me opportunities to work with them. So Bob Layton was another one. So there was a lot of opportunities. I get to see a lot of guys. It's different when you're just seeing the art, but it's really different when you're watching them do the art. So you can emulate them, and then somehow you pull your own style out of that.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry. I'm trying to fix the camera while I'm
Yeah,
doing all this.
yeah, yeah.
So actually, kind of let's get a kind of inspiration from and insight from the industry. So you worked across several different eras of comics, from the traditional pen and ink to digital workflows, right? So I can imagine you sitting by and doing everything via pen, but I can see you kind of transitioning from that over to
There you
over
go.
to
Digital.
yeah, over to digital, and how the workflow that comes with that, because that's a completely different workflow. And how was the art process and how was the industry like during those evolutional times?
So I am still a hand artist. I don't do anything digital. The
Mm,
only thing, I don't. In fact, I was at the New York Comic Con one year, and a guy who worked for Cintiq, which was the tablet, they used to offer these pressure sensitive tablets, and you would import the art on the tablet and then render away at it. But I was never comfortable with that.
you I was gonna say, you know what's funny? Because I saw a new device, right? And it was basically a pen, and it's pen a book, but it translated everything over to digital.
Yeah,
And it was very targeted to people that like just drawing like the regular way. So
yeah,
you draw on the paper like you would regularly do,
yeah,
but then there will be a copy of it on
yeah,
digital. And I
yeah,
thought that was cool. And I thought someone
yeah.
like you probably prefer those kind of workflows opposed to something that went digital where you're drawing on a screen, because the screen has a delay that kind of just ruins the entire moment.
Yeah, I just never. You know what? I'm an older guy now too, so
Yeah.
I don't have the same energy that I did. In fact, at one point, I was working for an editor at Marvel, and he told me that I'm one of the 20% guys who are still sending the artwork in, physical artwork in through FedEx. I said, what are the other 80% doing? They said the other 80% are doing digital, and they're just scanning it at high resolution, and then sending it through the World Wide Web, which also changed the amount of people that could work in the business, because now you can do international artwork, and there's a ton of guys.
How did, actually that's a good point of view, because I've worked with people overseas before, right, to do my little artwork, and I'm trying to figure out how does that affect the bigger clients and the bigger teams, because I'm assuming that that movement from just local talent had an impact on not just their art samples and their art styles, but their talent pool as well. So how did that affect you guys coming up in the process?
It did. It affected the people in the states a lot, because other countries could do the work at a lot less of a page rate. You get guys in Brazil and these different countries down south, down South America, or guys that are in Italy or other countries that could do it for less money. So it affected us greatly. And there's a huge talent pool out there. But once
Mhm.
it became digital, it changed. Because when Jim Shooter was the editor in chief, he wanted everybody that worked at Marvel to be near New York City. So he
Mhm.
would call you in and say, "You got to come in here and fix some stuff," or they were doing the new. I don't know if you remember the New Universe comics that Marvel was doing.
Probably not. I'm
Yeah,
still young with Marvel.
Kickstarters Inc. and can't think of the name of the books, but one time he had brought a whole crew in just to redraw, reletter, and recolor a whole book over a weekend. So, I was brought in to just help with the process because he didn't like the way the book looked. And
The entire book?
yeah, we did like 22-page book over a long weekend. It was crazy, but you do that when you're all in New York, right? And all within, you all went up to Marvel and you all just worked.
That workflow was intense. So actually, so that kind of brings up to my next question. So what's one lesson from working with major publishers that still shapes how you approach the work today?
Um, my my work is still, I like to say, is still very professional. I don't ever take shortcuts because I'm older now and I started 40 years ago.
Hmm.
Uh, I learned how to work shorthand. I could work quick, but
Okay.
now because I'm older, I still have the patience to render as well as I did. I think I might even in some ways be better than I was 40 years ago because I take my time and I've done 12,000 pages of art. So I understand,
That,
but I don't want to be like, I don't want to be a guy who just, you know, just, just sends it in. I want to make sure that I'm still doing the best work I can, but I take my time now.
that I would say I appreciate that level of professionalism in the work because I assure you there are people that don't honor it, but it shows up and you see it.
Appreciate
Uh,
that.
and I would say that probably shows up a lot with especially new art because with new art people just kind of get better over time just working on it. But now you can start off with a consistent look throughout the seam just because you've been doing it for so long, which I
Yeah,
guarantee you people like who works on especially new artists that are coming up, that's a very strong pull to be able to be consistent when you work throughout it.
right.
What would I don't want to touch that yet because that was a good question, but I already know what it is. So let's do this real quick. Let me just pay some bills real quick, and then we can come back to it. Right, right. All right. Give me a sec, guys. You know how this goes because you've been here long enough. Okay. Okay. There we go.
This video is sponsored by MyComic.ai, the first of its kind platform built to solve real struggles comic creators like us face. If you've ever felt stuck trying to make consistent sales from your work, this is your solution. MyComic.ai helps you turn your comic into a real business and grow it into a full-time income stream. Check it out today at MyComic.ai.
All right. All right. We're back. Thank you guys for being patient with me as I've been going through today. But I really wanted to get into Combat Jack, right? Because the first thing I told you was this would have been a great Halloween theme
Yeah,
that show because I was like so with it. I was like, can we do a Jack o' lantern that's dressed up as him? Because the idea of this guy is intense. So let's start off with Combat Jack. What inspired the idea for Space Martian invading alien Jack Lantern? How did we get here?
yeah. It was one of these Halloween type things where my son was here living with us before he got married, and I
Hmm.
said to him one day, I said, there's just not a lot of good jack o' lantern monsters out there, and we had the idea that we could come up with another planet in the universe on the other side of the sun, but in the same trajectory as the Earth. So it could be a temperate atmosphere with climates that could. And the only thing on there was sand and pumpkins. And we're trying to set up the future for Earth's overpopulation, and that people could live on this planet. And they send a team of prisoners up there to kind of set up the future, and they come across these alien jack o' lanterns, who we find out later in the series, because it was not originally done as a one shot,
Okay.
and then I don't know if you knew that or not.
No, I normally ask later if it
Yeah,
was going to be expanded to the
yeah,
universe.
yeah, yeah.
So
But
you start off
it
with
was
one shot and then you morph it into a miniseries.
4 minutes. Yeah, because IDW Comics at one point said to me, if you do it as a mini series, I will collect it for you. We will collect it for you and put it as a trade paperback. Uh, so now I have to think bigger. I have to think bigger outside the box. Now I can't just have us these guys, these prisoners on another planet. I have to bring them back to Earth. And I came up with the concept that our pumpkins that we harvest for Halloween are not our pumpkins; they're actually aliens that have been living here for millions of years. And that's the reason why dinosaurs are extinct because of
Wow.
yeah. And
You just wanted to set off multiple story arcs at this point.
yeah, I did that. I did a story from in on the planet, and then I did a story in a pumpkin patch, in the Midwest somewhere, and it was a lot of fun.
That sounds like a fun project, but it's like the core concept was already excited, right? If it's lantern versus alien.
Yeah,
It was, but then you went ahead and then built an entire universe that talks about just pumpkins in general. You try
yeah.
to screw up people's pumpkin spice lattes.
Spice lattes. Oh, see, now you gave me another idea. I can, I'll give you credit for that if I end up doing that.
I just find it very entertaining, and I know it's a structured horror film, so it's a sci-fi horror, and I guarantee it's going to be gruesome, but the concept behind it just makes me want to. It should be comedic, then horror. It's like you will laugh until you get stabbed.
I'll make sure I send you the entire book when we're
I appreciate it. And I do like the fact that you kind of touched on the base that you start off as a one series, but then you expanded it into a mini series
done.
due to demand. And so, can I ask a question concerning like how do you kind of picture the comic book environment for artists to kind of be able to do that, to kind of just transition from a let me tell you about the story and then to expand it into a mini series because a lot of persons start off with a head that they want to have a full series,
Yeah.
but there was never demand for it, and then other people trying to just show for the demand and then say, oh, I can expand it to something like that. So how do
Yeah.
you?
Well, I think you got to start with baby steps.
Mhm,
I never anticipated it being a four issue, 144-page book. To
mhm,
me, it was a one and done, 32 pages. I was going to get away from it. When IDW now introduced the idea of them producing it and publishing it, now I'm thinking outside the box. I'm thinking not only am
mhm.
I thinking that our dinosaurs are extinct, but the headless horseman, Brom Bones
Yes.
and Ichabod Crane. It wasn't really a guy with a fake pumpkin on his head. It was literally an alien pumpkin that killed him. And so you keep thinking of bigger, because you can't go smaller. You have to go bigger.
And it's funny because you took like a old something that someone's very well known for, like everyone knows what a pumpkin is, and
Right.
everyone knows what Jack o' Lantern is, and then you kind of just gave him a new life, spin on life.
New spin.
Which so now, guys, when we think about Halloween, we have a completely different story to think about.
Yeah.
So you also created something completely different with Banana Tales, a warm, all-age children's story. How did you? How did this project come about?
My kids were little. My daughter was 4. My son was newborn, and my daughter had an operation on her throat to remove a
Mhm.
cyst from her neck. And I remember as soon as we got her out of the hospital, I brought her to Toys R Us. And I said, "You could have anything in the store you want because you just went through an operation. You're 4 years old." And then I
Mhm.
started thinking, I would, I would be cool to create something that my daughter would go to a store and say, "I want banana tail" or something like that. So the whole concept for me was like, let's develop something there. And I had the audience to try it out on. I would put my daughter on my lap and read it to her, and then I would figure out how to make it better. Um,
Yeah,
now you know, hmm
I was thinking about a story when you told me about your children, you growing up, and I remember meeting a young creator. I think she's, let's say, preteen, if not teen, and we
okay,
met at the Baltimore Comic Con, and she was kind of telling her story. She made an actual book, children's book, about her younger brother that actually had I think he was a very picky eater, and she kind of just brought a story about him being forced to actually have to learn to
Yeah,
eat.
no, I there's a story there, for sure.
And I told her, yeah, you did it. No one can take that away from you. And it's very inspiring to hear how kids influence us adults to make our art. J-
Yep.
Truth be told, I just have a 1 year old right now. He's my mascot.
Congratulations. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that was thank you for sharing that so people could understand that it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Was it challenging to shift gears between a dark sci-fi theme to a more whimsical kids friendly theme?
Yeah, it's very different, but I call my publishing, I have my own little publishing company. I call it Banana Tail Press.
Hmm.
So, but I like to be all ages, right? I want to draw and write stuff for. I always been a big horror fan.
Hmm.
When EC Comics did weird Wonder Tales or weird fantasies or Vault of Horror, Tomb of the Tales of the Crypt. I was always a big fan of that stuff. So for me, that was kind of like playing in that sandbox again. Uh,
Actually, that's a good point because I was saying you came from a more corporate background in terms of this art field. So I was gonna say, did going to your own separate private publishing allow you to kind of expand your not just your art style, but your ability to go into different
Genres.
creative venues? Because you have horror and you have a child store. You could go any kind of way now because it's your own little playground or sandbox, as you did.
Yeah, for sure. Because everything I do for Marvel, right? Marvel owns. So
Hmm.
I had to do stuff for the other, for me personally.
Hmm.
Because after doing this 40 years and working on thousands of pages of art, you're like, what about me? Why can't I do something that works for me?
For you, it's something that you want. Is everybody wants? I feel like everyone has a story that they want to see other people enjoy.
Yeah. No, and there's nothing better, Sean, than having somebody read it and reach out to you and say, "I read that book to my kid 3 times in one night." That's
I think that's why we love going to Comic Cons because that's what happens.
yeah, that's the golden fleece right there.
I remember one of the first interviews I had, he was telling me how kids would literally come to the Comic Con just to get his book because they were following him for so long.
Yeah,
And I'm like, the idea that's kind of what got me into trying to go to Comic Cons um recently because it's like I felt like if I get to introduce myself to the younger audience, but also just people in general, I get to see how they interact. And in the sci-fi space specifically, because my comic is sci-fi, I find that they are they are ecstatic about it when I tell them the story.
yeah.
So it's very fun to actually have the opportunity, and I'm sure you had multiple opportunities over your past year to just go and meet the fans and have the fans kind of tell you how they love your work.
No, there's nothing better, than that, right? I mean, I don't sell as many Banana Tails as I sell Spider-Man prints,
For,
but every time I sell a Banana Tail book, to me, it's more rewarding because it's from my heart.
because it's your baby,
My
and I
baby.
get that. Um, so here's a question that's gonna be so you should understand it. So what does your creative process look like today from idea to finished book?
Well, first of all, because I've been a mainstream guy for
Hmm.
so long, there are a lot of guys out there that are still in the indie market that want to succeed at a bigger venue. So I've become like a project manager for other books. So I have a team. I actually created a virtual studio called Virtual Inks Inc. And what I was trying to do was create a studio of pencilers, inkers, letterers, colorists, and then you come to me with an idea, and I will put it together for you.
Hmm.
I will charge you by the page, but you will get this, that, and the other thing, And
Hmm.
we did a book called The Tomb of Baldereth, which was a horror book I did, which was kind of a throwback to the old DC multiple horror stuff, where this demon introduces these stories of horror of monsters that are going to uh, take eat different body parts like brains, hearts, and souls. And
So
we did this 48-page book, and I raised over $6,000 to do it as a black and white 48-page book. And
you
I still
made it.
have guys that want to work with me. I try to get them all a page rate. It can't be Marvel rate because I'm not a Marvel guy. But I try to give them. I try to make sure they get paid, and I make sure that I work with guys that I trust and get their jobs done and stuff like that.
That's cool. So it's like you've now had so you're more like corporate now in terms of your entire transitional style from idea to stuff. And so let me ask, do you still do traditional inking or you have fully embraced traditional inking now?
I still do traditional inking, Sean. I was going to pull up a couple of things for you.
Yeah. Woo!
Traditional. This is a book I'm
That
doing
is
for.
so clean. What?
Yeah,
And it's like I can tell the story without actually seeing any words on it, which is
that's right. The lettering's all done. The lettering is all done digitally, but I'm still drawing on boards.
oh Lord, this is what I call experience shown through its artworks. Like you can see the. I would say this. One of the stuff I do realize as I am getting better in the field, building my own company and stuff like that, the ability to tell to structure a scene that words become very minimal. It's I only seen that with experienced artists. It's very hard to see that with younger artists because when I'm dealing with experienced artists, it's like they can write before I don't have to say it. They will just write it in there and it just sits there. I can see the entire tension
That's
in the
right.
scene. You can feel everything in the scene without a single word being said
That's
in
right.
the scene.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and for me to communicate that, especially dealing with overseas talent, to communicate that same exact expressions with a younger person, it would take so much time and effort in just writing it that
yeah,
by the time I'm done, I'll be like more stressed.
yeah. Well, you're right though. Sometimes young people they want to write
They take
what
it factual. They take it flat.
you don't need to. You don't need to write all of it if it's visual, right? You
Hmm.
could just let the story be told by visuals, and just add your captions or your lettering balloons without taking away from the artwork.
And I think you can agree with me or not, but as when you're younger, it's kind of like you you see it as is, but then when you get older, you see everything that's behind it. So, for example, a person waking up in the morning on a regular day versus a person waking up to go do something that they're not really looking forward to do is a completely different experience
Sure.
waking up. And how do you transition that without me having to tell the person specifically, yo, they're about to do something big today?
Yeah. Yeah.
And how do you and then but you still feel like it's a wake up stage. It's like I feel and I felt the emotion when I saw your page right there versus when I was looking at my own stuff. I was like, ooh, I can see it.
Yeah.
I can see it.
No, you're right though.
You have collaborated with so many writers and artists over the couple of years. What has made a great creative partnership in your experience?
Uh, when you collaborate with a pencil artist, um, I think a lot of times it's important to reach out to that person and ask them what they're looking for. What do you like? What don't you like? Do you like rendering? Do you want me to over embellish on top of your stuff? Do you spend all day drawing this? How do you want me to how do you want me to move forward?
Mm.
Because think about it, if a guy's drawing a pencil page, he's taking 6, 7 hours to draw it. Don't kill his artwork by just doing whatever you want to do, you know.
Ooh. Ooh.
So that plays a role.
And that one was rough. Because I know the feeling. I know that feeling. As I do programming, and it's very, and I would say I get very heated when I spent all as like I analyzed the entire problem, I created an entire perfect solution, and then you kind of just like, no, that took too long. I'm going to do this. That takes 5 minutes. You'd be like,
Exactly
no.
right. Yeah.
and
Same kind of
then
thing.
when it breaks, you're looking at me like, no, I ain't gonna fix it because you broke it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, my best relationships were with, Mike McKone, who I worked on, I don't know, a book called Vex for DC. I worked on Magnus Robot Fighter for Claim. We did a ton of work together. Exiles for Marvel, and then Jim Calafiore also is a guy I had a lot of friends. We were also friends beforehand, so that worked out nice. And then Ron Lim, who I worked with on a Spider-Man miniseries, some Captain Marvel stuff like that.
Okay. Okay. So I did ask you this question before we got started, so I hope you're ready for it. So we're going into the final stretch right now, and what I really want to ask, and I ask all my guests this question: what advice would you give to an aspiring artist who wants to build a career in comics today, especially balancing freelance work and their own creative projects?
So the trick today is when I started in 1985, you could go up to Marvel Comics and leave your portfolio there,
Mm.
and they would then review it, and then they send it. They would bring it back to the front desk, and then you would go in, and then you pick up your portfolio. Usually, to be a letter from Stan Lee or whatever, Jim Shooter or whatever. Um, they don't allow that anymore. You can't go into Marvel and DC and just drop off artwork. So the way a young guy can get in it now is by going to comic convention and meeting professionals, or sometimes Marvel does portfolio reviews at some of the bigger shows. So you schedule a portfolio review, and they'll give you a sample to try out, and that's how you might move forward. Because it's 40 years ago, I don't know all the ins and outs of that anymore, like I did when I started out. Like I used to do portfolio reviews for in the New York Comic Con.
Mm.
In fact, if I would do an hour of reviews, and if I had if I had to review, say, 10 portfolios in an hour, one of the 10 would be good, because
I
a
was
lot
going
of
to
guys.
ask you that. I was going to ask you that. So, what has been your experience when you're going through these reviews of other arts work? Is there like a correlation between their skill set versus their time in the field? Do you kind of see there's correlation there, or it's kind of like they have a different art style that's completely different from what we're looking for?
Art style is it? Art style should be refreshing, right, in the business. The problem is, are they drawing for on a board or a napkin? Are they telling a story, or are they just doing a pretty pinup?
Oh,
Marvel's going to hire you, or DC's going to hire you because you can storytell with visuals. Not just
mm,
just draw something silly stick figures. You want to know that you have style. And also, the business has changed that much now that Marvel and DC is hiring a lot. They're hiring a lot of talent with, without having to pay the same rates that they
mm.
did. Marvel was selling 250,000 books a month of Spider-Man.
And I would say since especially the Marvel, because I looked into their business, they spend a lot more time on actual. They get a lot more of their revenue from their actually movies than they do their comic book sales.
Totally, totally true.
So that would basically mean that they don't lean as much as to that side of the business as they do the other side, even though it does give them more content to push to that side. They
Yeah.
don't necessarily have to spend a lot of time there anymore. So, but you did bring up a lot of the one thing I took away from what you just said is the ability to visually tell a story.
Mhm.
And that and I think in the comic book world that is by far the biggest concept or the biggest takeaway that people need to take from the younger to the older. If I could be the intermediate person that talks to the younger guys and the older guys and say, what y'all take away? Be able to tell a story
Yeah.
visually.
Yeah.
Because trust me, that is I've it's I don't think I can emphasize how important that is.
No, it is. It's they try to tell you to do 3 pages or 3 to 5 pages of storytelling,
Hmm.
and that you know how to move the camera around, or to make exciting panels.
Hmm.
Medium shots, close-ups, distance shots, establishment shots. All that plays a role in that business. That's how they decide if they're going to try with it.
I haven't drawn in a really long time, right? I remember when I was used to be good at it, but I'm not no longer good at it, especially not on you guys level. And but I would say they I enjoy seeing good penmanship, and I appreciate it when I see it. And thank you for sharing it with us right here. So here's the question, my final few questions. Looking back, what do you hope people take away from your work, both from mainstream projects and your own creative projects?
I hope that go down as a guy that was a good talent, and that I gave you your money's worth, and I didn't just dial it in. And my hope still is that my own projects take off to another level. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Image, I don't know if you know this, but Image produced one of my Banana Tail books.
Mm.
Jim Valentino took it on, and he has a sub company called Silverline Press, and he did Banana Tail as a hardcover. But the problem
So
was didn't get out in the stores that well.
so I think you know what's fun. I think would be a great opportunity for us, especially if we do a follow up to this meeting. Is I call it. I want to do a business panel where people just talk about the business of it, because the ability to be able to network and get into like these publishing houses, the small, medium, and large ones, kind of allows a lot of comic book creators to kind of get to tell their story the way they wanted it to be told.
Sure.
And the and I think we just don't understand that entire process, because once you understand the process, it gives the opportunity to kind of tell the story that you want to tell and actually get the opportunity. You don't want to be like what do you call it? You don't want to be like Dragon Ball Z and be forced to kind of do 200 more seasons just because they don't want you to close.
Right.
But you also want the ability to say, if this is 10 seasons, I want to be able to tell all 10 seasons and still eat every day. So I do appreciate that. And finally, where can fans find Combat Jack, Banana Tales, and follow your project and your latest work?
Sure. So on social media, you can find me on Facebook. I think it's Mark A. McKenna, A for Anthony, even though it's not even my middle name. It's my confirmation name. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I don't love Twitter that much. But also, I have websites, markmckennaart.com, bananatail.com, and combatjacks.com. And all
Yeah.
of them you could purchase. You could purchase the books. You could look around. It's just I try to make it fun, especially Banana Tail. Banana Tail. At one point, I have a map of the island they live on, and there's recipes, banana recipes, and some cartoons and things like that.
I think because I've been watching too many since I have a 1 year old, I've been watching a lot of punkin rock and blues and stuff like that. I just saw this entire thing just being in that category.
Bluey.
I was like, that'd be so entertaining to just watch my kid just watching Banana Tales as an actual thing.
That would be fun. It is actually an animation done. I'll send it to you when we're done.
You see, I would always it's always the ability to kind of do multicasting, right? Ability to say to see your image in multiple different avenues. Well, Mark, I just want to thank you. You've been an absolute honor. You left your mark, no pun intended. So many iconic tales. Your passion for storytelling continues to inspire creators and fans alike. For everyone watching, be sure to check out combatjack.com, bananatales.com, and markmckenna's.art.com. And follow Mark on social media. All this will be linked in the description. I'm Sean, creator of Apollo's Run, host of Behind the Comics, sponsored by My Comic AI, where we help comic book creators grow and monetize their work. thank you for staying tuned, and I thank you for keeping supporting indie comics and veteran comics creators alike. Thank you. I'm going
Thank
to
you, sir.
thank you guys. Now I'm going to start my